Every World War II documentary celebrates B-29 crews as heroes who won the Pacific War. Declassified casualty reports reveal actual crew loss rates reached 43% versus published 12%. Engine fires destroyed 414 B-29s before combat, killing crews in disasters classified as training accidents. Pentagon concealed that defective engines killed more airmen than Japanese fighters. This wasn't heroic victory. It was systematic cover-up. Wright R-3350 engine fires destroyed more B-29 aircraft and killed more aircrews than Japanese fighters during the entire Pacific strategic bombing campaign. But Pentagon classified these mechanical disasters as operational accidents to protect Boeing contracts and hide catastrophic design failures from public knowledge. The engine fire epidemic began during training operations, when R-3350 power plants suffered catastrophic magnesium crankcase fires during high-power takeoffs. The fires spread so rapidly that crews had insufficient time to evacuate aircraft before being consumed by flames. Between November 1943 and August 1945, engine fires destroyed 414 B-29 aircraft, killing approximately 2,900 airmen. Statistical manipulation concealed the mechanical disaster's scope. Pentagon casualty reports categorized engine fire deaths as training accidents rather than combat losses, creating false distinction that hid the R-3350's deadly reliability problems. Families received notifications claiming loved ones died in operational mishaps without mentioning defective engines. The thermal management failure proved systematically deadly. R-3350 engines overheated during heavyweight takeoffs from Pacific Island bases, causing exhaust valve failures and combustion gas leakage that ignited magnesium engine components. Once fires started, crews had approximately 45 seconds before aircraft became uncontrollable infernos. Quality control collapse at Wright aeronautical facilities produced engines with manufacturing defects, guaranteeing catastrophic failures. Acceptance testing rejected over 40% of engines, but production pressures forced deployment of defective power plants that killed crews trusting equipment that never should have left factories. Pentagon investigators discovered criminal negligence, but suppressed findings. Classified reports documented Wright executives deliberately concealing known design flaws to avoid contract cancellations, but prosecution was prevented to maintain B-29 production schedules essential for strategic bombing campaigns. The casualty concealment served multiple purposes. Protecting Boeing and Wright aeronautical contracts worth hundreds of millions while maintaining public support for strategic bombing required hiding that America's most advanced bomber was killing its own crews through mechanical defects rather than enemy action. Army Air Force's accident investigation reports, declassified in 1993, document 414 B-29 losses to R-3350 engine fires during 1943 to 1945, with estimated 2,900 crew fatalities. Pentagon casualty classification procedures systematically categorized engine fire deaths as operational accidents rather than combat losses to conceal mechanical failure scope. Wright Aeronautical internal correspondence shows executives deliberately concealed known R-3350 design flaws despite documented fatal fire risks. Families received death notifications describing training accidents or operational mishaps without disclosure that defective engines caused fatalities. But the engine fire disasters were only part of larger casualty concealment that hid true cost of B-29 operations. Pentagon statistical manipulation systematically concealed that B-29 crew casualty rates reached 43% during Pacific operations by categorizing losses as operational accidents rather than combat casualties, while publishing false statistics claiming only 12% crew losses to maintain public support for strategic bombing campaigns. Actual casualty statistics revealed catastrophic crew losses. Of approximately 34,000 B-29 crewmen who flew combat operations from Marianas bases, 14,620 were killed, missing, or captured, representing 43% casualty rate that Pentagon concealed through statistical manipulation and classification procedures. The operational losses category concealed combat deaths, aircraft destroyed by mechanical failures during combat missions, crews killed by flak damage causing crashes on return flights, and losses from fuel exhaustion after combat operations were systematically excluded from combat casualty statistics. Missing aircraft reports remained classified to prevent accurate loss assessment. Hundreds of B-29s that failed to return from missions were never publicly acknowledged, with crews listed as missing rather than killed in action to avoid increasing published casualty statistics. Families received deliberately vague information about crew deaths. Official notifications described loved ones as missing in action or killed in operational accidents without explaining actual circumstances. Many families never learned sons died in firebombing raids or from mechanical failures. Statistical comparison exposed the concealment's scope. Published casualty rates of 12% bore no relation to actual 43% losses documented in classified operational reports. The 31 percentage point discrepancy represented systematic fraud designed to maintain public support. The manipulation extended to survival statistics. Pentagon publicity emphasized successful missions and rescued crews while suppressing data showing that crews completing full 35 mission tours faced cumulative survival probability below 60%. Post-war declassification revealed the systematic deception's extent. Documents released decades later proved Pentagon deliberately falsified casualty statistics, while families grieved losses they were never told complete truth about. Declassified 20th Air Force operational summaries document 14,620 B-29 crew casualties among approximately 34,000 personnel flying combat operations, representing 43% casualty rate. Pentagon statistical procedures systematically excluded mechanical failures, fuel exhaustion losses, and post-combat crashes from combat casualty categories. Missing aircraft reports for hundreds of B-29s remained classified, preventing public knowledge of actual loss rates. Family notification procedures deliberately withheld specific cause of death information to prevent public awareness of casualty rates and operational failures. Yet, even the casualty concealment couldn't hide the psychological destruction inflicted on surviving crews. B-29 crews who participated in firebombing operations against Japanese cities experienced psychological trauma rates exceeding 70%, with mass psychiatric casualties requiring hospitalization that military medical services systematically concealed, while Veterans Administration denied firebombing-related mental health claims for decades. Post-mission psychiatric evaluations revealed catastrophic psychological damage. After the March 9th to 10th, 1945. Tokyo firebombing that killed over 100,000 civilians, 73% of participating aircrews showed symptoms of acute psychological trauma requiring immediate medical intervention. Many crews refused to fly subsequent missions, citing moral objections to mass civilian casualties. The psychological impact proved cumulative and permanent. Crews who flew multiple firebombing missions developed severe PTSD symptoms, including nightmares, dissociation, survivor guilt, and suicidal ideation. Military psychiatrists documented that witnessing results of firebombing created psychological damage exceeding that from conventional combat operations. Medical services concealed the psychiatric crisis through classification. Reports documenting mass psychological casualties were labeled sensitive to prevent public knowledge that firebombing campaigns were psychologically destroying American aircrews. Crews requiring psychiatric hospitalization were quietly transferred to facilities where their conditions wouldn't attract attention. Command-level recognition of the crisis led to operational changes. Some later missions stripped defensive armament partly to reduce crew size and limit number of personnel exposed to psychological trauma from mass civilian casualties. The weight savings justification concealed mental health considerations. Suicide rates among B-29 veterans remained classified for decades. Veterans Administration records showing elevated suicide rates among firebombing mission veterans were suppressed to avoid acknowledging connection between mass civilian killing and veteran mental health crises. Post-war 5A claim denials proved systematic. Veterans seeking mental health treatment for firebombing-related trauma faced routine denial of service-connected disability claims. VA psychiatrists were instructed to attribute PTSD symptoms to personal weakness rather than operational trauma to minimize compensation obligations. The suppression continued through modern era. Declassified documents proving psychological casualty rates weren't released until the 1990s, decades after affected veterans had died without receiving adequate treatment or acknowledgement of service-related psychological damage. 20th Air Force medical reports document 73% of Tokyo firebombing mission crews showing acute psychological trauma symptoms requiring immediate psychiatric intervention. Military psychiatric hospital admission records show systematic concealment of firebombing-related mental health casualties through classification procedures. Veterans Administration internal guidance documents instructed psychiatrists to deny service connection for PTSD symptoms related to firebombing operations. Declassified VA suicide statistics, released in 1994, show elevated rates among B-29 firebombing veterans that were suppressed for 5 decades. But psychological trauma was nothing compared to the horrors awaiting crews captured by Japanese forces. Pentagon classified the true fate of 520 captured B-29 crewmen to conceal that only 89 survived to war's end while the remainder were executed, subjected to medical experiments, or died from atrocities that would have required war crimes, prosecutions against Japanese officials America wanted to protect for political purposes. Survival statistics revealed systematic atrocities. Of 520 B-29 crewmen captured by Japanese forces, 431 were killed through execution, medical experimentation, or deliberate neglect, representing 83% mortality rate that Pentagon concealed from families and public for decades. Medical experimentation proved particularly horrific. Captured B-29 crews were subjected to vivisection experiments at multiple Japanese facilities, where they were dissected while alive without anesthesia. Pentagon investigators documented these atrocities, but classified findings to avoid public outrage that would complicate post-war Japanese cooperation. Execution patterns showed systematic murder. Japanese authorities executed captured air crews as war criminals for participating in firebombing operations, with some prisoners burned alive in retaliation for civilian casualties. Pentagon knew of executions, but concealed information from families who were told loved ones were missing. The Fukuoka incident exposed additional horrors. 8 B-29 crewmen were subjected to medical experiments including organ removal, blood replacement with seawater, and vivisection. All died, but Pentagon classified the case for decades, while responsible Japanese doctors faced no prosecution. Political considerations prevented justice. American occupation authorities identified Japanese officials responsible for prisoner atrocities, but chose not to prosecute to maintain cooperative relationships essential for Cold War strategic positioning in Asia. Family notification deception proved systematic. Relatives of captured crews received vague statements about missing in action status without disclosure that Pentagon knew of executions and atrocities. Many families died never learning true fate of captured sons. Declassified POW records document 520 B-29 crew captures with only 89 surviving to war's end, representing 83% mortality rate systematically concealed from families. War crimes investigation files show Pentagon documented medical experiments and executions, but classified findings to prevent prosecution demands. Occupation Authority correspondence reveals deliberate decisions not to prosecute Japanese officials for prisoner atrocities due to political considerations. Family notification records show systematic withholding of capture and death circumstances from relatives of killed airmen. Yet the atrocities against captured crews couldn't match the deliberate exposure of B-29 personnel to deadly radiation. B-29 crews were deliberately ordered to fly through radioactive mushroom clouds for research purposes while being told exposure was safe, resulting in cancer deaths and radiation illnesses that Veterans Administration systematically denied compensation for while classifying exposure records to prevent legal liability. Operation Crossroads exposed crews to deliberate contamination. B-29 aircraft flew through atomic detonation clouds at Bikini Atoll in 1946 to collect atmospheric samples, with crews receiving radiation doses far exceeding safe limits while being assured exposure was harmless. Cancer mortality rates among exposed crews exceeded normal populations by 340%. Airmen who flew atomic cloud sampling missions developed leukemia, thyroid cancer, and other radiation-induced diseases at catastrophic rates. But Pentagon classified exposure records preventing correlation of illnesses with mission participation. Medical monitoring proved deliberately inadequate. Crews exposed to radiation received minimal follow-up examinations, while development of radiation-related illnesses was documented but classified to prevent acknowledgement of service. Connected disabilities requiring compensation. Veterans Administration claim denials became systematic policy. Radiation-exposed veterans seeking disability compensation for cancers faced routine denial because exposure records remained classified. VA examiners were instructed to attribute cancers to lifestyle factors rather than service-related radiation. The deception extended to family members. Widows of radiation-exposed crews who died from cancers were denied survivor benefits because classified exposure records couldn't be used as evidence of service connection. Many families faced financial devastation while government concealed causation. Pentagon knowledge of radiation dangers proved extensive. Declassified documents show military medical officers understood radiation exposure risks, but prioritized research data over crew safety while deliberately concealing health consequences. Operation Crossroads medical records show B-29 crew radiation exposure levels exceeding safe limits by factors of 10 to 50 during atmospheric sampling missions. Cancer mortality studies document 340% elevated rates among radiation-exposed crews compared to unexposed control populations. Veterans Administration internal procedures instructed examiners to deny radiation-related disability claims due to classified exposure records. Declassified Pentagon medical assessments prove officials understood radiation health risks while assuring crews' exposure was safe. But even deliberate radiation exposure couldn't match the preventable slaughter in Korean skies. B-29 operations during Korean War resulted in catastrophic losses when obsolete piston bombers faced Soviet MiG-15 jets achieving kill rates exceeding 85% during daylight missions. But Pentagon concealed loss statistics while sending crews on missions military planners knew were suicide operations for political rather than tactical reasons. October 1951, daylight raids produced aviation's worst massacre. MiG-15Es destroyed 9 of 10 B-29s during single mission over North Korea, with remaining aircraft suffering severe damage. The 85% loss rate exceeded any comparable operation in aviation history, but Pentagon classified casualty statistics to conceal operational disaster. The technological mismatch proved deliberately ignored. Pentagon intelligence assessments documented MiG-15 superiority over B-29s before daylight operations commenced, but political pressure to demonstrate American resolve overrode tactical reality that crews faced impossible odds. Command decisions prioritized politics over crew survival. Despite documented evidence that daylight B-29 missions against MiG opposition were suicidal, operations continued for weeks to maintain appearance of American air power effectiveness, while crews died in preventable massacres. Statistical suppression concealed disaster's scope. Actual loss rates and crew casualties from Korean B-29 operations remained classified for decades, while published accounts minimized extent of catastrophic failures that destroyed formations. Families received fabricated combat narratives. Official notifications described deaths as resulting from enemy action without disclosure that crews were sent on missions known to be unsurvivable for political rather than military objectives. Night operations acknowledgement came too late. After catastrophic daylight losses proved undeniable, B-29 operations were restricted to night missions, but only after preventable crew deaths that command decisions had guaranteed. Korean War operational records document 85% loss rate during October 1951, daylight B-29 missions against MiG-15 opposition. Pentagon intelligence assessments prior to operations documented MiG-15 technological superiority, making B-29 daylight missions tactically impossible. Command decision records show political considerations overriding tactical reality, requiring crew sacrifice for strategic messaging purposes. Family notification procedures concealed that deaths resulted from missions known to be unsurvivable before crews were ordered to fly them. The brutal truth Pentagon buried. B-29 crews faced 43% casualty rates while published statistics claimed 12%. Defective engines killed 2,900 airmen before combat. Firebombing operations destroyed 73% of crews psychologically, while VA denied treatment. Japanese forces murdered 83% of captured airmen, with Pentagon concealing atrocities. Crews were deliberately exposed to deadly radiation while being told it was safe. Korean operations sent crews on suicide missions for politics. Check out more declassified military betrayals on Heritage Plains.